Welcome to Raising the Bar, the podcast that pulls back the curtain on the country's most successful leaders and how they elevate their business and their teams. Please welcome our host, Alison DePauli.
So, Darryl, thank you so much for joining us today, and everybody listening. This is Raising the Bar with Alison DePauli, and we talk to CEOs who have raised the bar in their professional and philanthropic lives. It is my pleasure to have Darryl Lyons, the CEO and founder of Pax Financial, with me today. Not only an outstanding financial services firm, but Darryl is a Forbes Council member and an author and has a podcast of his own, the aptly named Retire in Texas. So thank you for being with me today.
Thank you for having me. I enjoy it.
So we have had a little chance to talk, and I want to talk about something near and dear to my heart that I don't think enough people have done, which is identifying your customer. And you know, we work with plenty of businesses who are very successful but have customers all over the place. You've done a lot of work with identifying who your customer is, and you've seen some outstanding results there. Tell me about that process.
Yeah, so we went through some exercises to really hone in on who's our ideal prospect, our ideal client. And of course, you look everything from who is ideal to who is not ideal. You kind of have to take out the people who you don't want to work with.
Yep.
And then it's not only who you enjoy working with, but who is good. There's good margins on that type of client.
Yes.
Because as we know, only in business, only mutually profitable relationships endure. So you have to make sure you pick the right one. When I first started out in this business, I was knocking on doors and
weren't we all?
What's that?
Weren't we all?
Yeah, exactly. And because I didn't have a target, in my mind, the only people I knew were people in trailer parks or college students. So that wasn't really an ideal prospect.
Yep.
But today, fast forward, and when you have a little bit more ability to pick and choose, you want to say who do you pick and who do you choose, and we ended up narrowing that down into a persona. We call her Maria, and we have a couple of personas, but Maria's the one I'll mention here, and she's a 60-year-old female. Her husband owns a business. She stayed at home. She's worked hard raising the kids. They've now graduated from Texas A&M. They're doing well. They enjoy
Good Aggie.
Her husband plays golf, but he's not that good. And she is enjoying wine with her friends up in Fredericksburg on the weekends. That's Maria.
See, I think that is so fascinating. We have done some similar work, and the most important part of that process for us was identifying who is not our client. And I think it goes right back to that. Who do you like to work with, and who has good margin for you? I mean, we're all here to make a living, right? And I think a lot of companies don't decide who they don't want to work with. And, we don't want to work with people who, there's no need for us to work with people who are happy with what's going on in the health insurance space. There are plenty of people to take care of them, but we know there is a significant percentage of people who know there's a challenge. And I would imagine that it is the same in your business.
It is, yeah. So, there's a lot of people who may fit the profile, but they haven't recognized the pain points that exist in their life. And so one of the challenges, especially in a financial services platform, is trying to help. What I would always say is just disturb them a little bit. And in the health insurance business, it may be, do you recognize that, your deductible is X, or, this is not covered. And so those conversations of disturbing then creates a sense of urgency to engage. And so being in a position to disturb people is important, because it just reminds them, hey, you may need life insurance, or you may need to reduce your spending. And so my point in that is that you do have to have the persona, and then it's our responsibility to get them to take action, identify the pain point.
Yes, and you have done that very interestingly. And there are not a lot of successful financial services podcasts. And I know you're early in on this, but I think you seem to really like it. And it's proving useful to people.
Yeah, we've gotten exceptional feedback. Honestly, we have a long list of people that we've already interviewed. We've only launched 8 episodes at this point in time, but we have in upcoming interviews people who have played in the NFL, who have played in the NBA, retired executives, entrepreneurs, philanthropists, anybody that has transitioned into retirement, which we define in various ways throughout the show, but done it in Texas. And why did they do it in Texas? And why did they decide to stay here? And what's important to them? What are their values? And what are they going to do in this next chapter of their lives? And so we unpack all of that. And frankly, I just sit there and listen to the stories, and I'm just fascinated by that alone.
I think that's always the best part, right? Is learning what people are doing. And it's like, wait, what? And that's another thing we see is all of my clients want to know what everybody else is doing. And so we thought we'd give them a way to do that.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's you said it so well, because we help people in retirement making this transition, but they always ask, am I doing okay? What are other people doing? Yep. And this is a platform for us to be able to share that. And I try, when I interview people, I usually know all their financials in most cases.
Sure.
But I don't really go there that much. I want to know a little bit about it, but I don't want them to blast out their financials in a public forum unless they're comfortable. But many people share things about their pension. I had one interview just recently said, I'm living better now that I'm retired than I was when I was working. And so
I've heard that
people are freer to disclose than others.
Yes. And let's go back to talk about your definitions of retirement, because I think it's different for different people. Mm-hmm. And I think, our audience mostly own their own businesses, or they're the second or the third generation. And that means different things for different groups of them. I know some people, they never retire, but they may not work the way they did when they were 40 or 50 or 60.
Yeah. So it's a great point. What we want to try to do is squirrel away enough assets so that way if somebody's health, they have a stroke, they can live off of those assets. So that's kind of what we're hedging in life, is how do we squirrel away enough money so that way if anything happens to you, you can fall back on that. But the reality is we don't necessarily want somebody to retire. We often use the word pivot, meaning we want them to pivot into the next chapter of life with purpose. We've identified through a process called behavioral finance that when people pivot into the next chapter with purpose and with community, they live longer and happier. And so it's our responsibility to help kind of tease those things out through our behavioral finance process and couple that with the math associated with making good financial decisions.
Let's go back and talk about the behavioral finance process, because I think there are some pretty clear patterns now, and a lot of people don't realize what they are. And also back to pivoting, where I think when people think of retirement, they often think, oh, I'm going to work and then I'm going to be at home. And that I think is detrimental, particularly to men. My father's 83. He still goes to the office. We have no idea what he does there, but he goes every day, and he would die if he had to stay home.
Yeah.
But I think that there's more than just one trend there.
There are. So first of all, we know people are living longer, and they continuously live longer. And we also know that anxiety is escalating across the board in every demographic. And the other thing that we're seeing a lot is what's called gray divorce. And that's those that are retiring, they end up getting a divorce. And it's happening more and more, and it's an accelerated rate. And part of which is that prior to this pivot transition, there were so many coping mechanisms that were covering up more deeper issues. Mm-hmm. And so, for some people, it may make sense to actually kind of go through some counseling and talk through this, because, that husband who decides to transition may eventually frustrate the wife by rearranging the spice cabinets every day. And so these things have to be resolved in a very thoughtful and reasonable way. But these are trends that we're seeing now. And the behavioral finance process that we take our clients through helps align what the priorities are, because sometimes you're just kind of in marriage and in life, we're just responding to life and how, health or kids or grandkids. But what we try to do is in our behavioral finance process is try to say, what are y'all's priorities that you agree upon? And then the decisions that husband and wife make going forward has alignment with purpose. And so maybe that purpose in this exercise is the number one goal that they may have is travel. And so what we do is we try to build a financial picture around how do we make the most of traveling and make sure that that's a priority and you're focused on that. And really what that is, the byproduct of that is to make memories. Many people, their number one priority is to spend time with people they care about. So what we try to do is get the husband and wife to focus on that, be aligned on that, and then have the money support those decisions.
Have you seen people, I'm sure you have clients that have made a second or a third pivot?
Oh yeah, a lot. Obviously, it depends on when you make your first pivot. If you make it at 50, then you have a chance to could do a couple more. But yeah, sometimes things don't work out. Whether it's starting a business or teaching, or many people, I think one person I think of, he went into sales, hated it, ended up finding a job at a university. Worked his way up to an academic teaching level. So yeah, it's sometimes it's kind of finding and navigating your groove and ebbs and flows. And a lot of people do that. It's a really good point. A lot of people do that. And I actually, now that I mentioned that, I don't think about that enough, is how many people actually have multiple pivots. And maybe they're not as big as the first one, which was maybe ending a 30-year career. But there are 3 or 4 that happen along the way. And so, yeah, I didn't think about that, but that happens a lot.
And I know you also have a very small specialized practice in families with special needs children.
Yeah, so it's just a byproduct of the heart of our advisors who either have special needs children or have family members. And so we're just very active in that community and our giving. In fact, people can see more about our giving methodology. You can YouTube a video called The Giving Challenge, and it shares how we give to the community. And so I let a lot of the giving and the heart of our organization come bottom up, because I've tried to take it from top down to where here's my heart and you guys execute, but the momentum happens when it comes from the bottom up. So the Giving Challenge video shows how that's done from an executive level. And we've seen great results of that. So I'd say the special needs angle that you've recognized is really a byproduct of our team.
Okay, we're going to link to the Giving Challenge video, because I think that is a very thoughtful way that an organization can focus their contributions. And we do something similar, and I would love to see more organizations think about doing that. I know a lot of very philanthropic people, and I think often people think that you can't be philanthropic unless you can give large amounts of money, and I don't believe that's true.
No, my giving started when I was broke. I mean, I was completely broke 20 years ago. I made a commitment to give, and I did 2 things. One, I made a commitment to give. 2, I went on this Dave Ramsey thing, started doing envelopes and everything. That's when I became a fan of Dave Ramsey. But yeah, giving and again, going back to behavioral finance, giving is very important, because Notre Dame did some studies on this and identified that those that give have less anxiety. And I kind of keep looping back around to this because I see thousands of people all the time talk about very intimate money issues. And anxiety is a key issue that we're dealing with in society today. And I know we all know this, but I try to say, hey, what are some solutions that are in my back pocket that I could maybe articulate to help people with this? And believe it or not, giving is a antidote to that anxiety. It's kind of a strange thing, but what it does is it puts things in perspective. So if I'm giving to a nonprofit, maybe thinking about that intellectually or engaging in their newsletters or having dialogue, it resets my discomforts and says, look, maybe I don't have it so bad. And that's a game changer for a lot of people. And so the giving part is understated. And, that's what a good financial advisor will find a way for you to give. They can carve out that money, both for a retiree or somebody who's accumulating.
Sure. I think, and there are lots of excellent resources in San Antonio to steer your giving if you are just an individual person. And if you are a business owner listening to this, then go watch that video.
Yeah.
because I think it's very important. And there's really good research now about control and helping other people and what that does for yourself. And it's like gratitude, right? It's very popular now to have a gratitude journal or be grateful for different things and acknowledge that in some way to yourself. And I think that also helps alleviate anxiety and just pivoting a little bit away. And I think, we did very well during the last couple of years, and even we're very stressed. I think, anxiety and stress are huge factors in the workplace now, and we've seen employers completely pivot how they handle that. They have to. And it's
true. The gratitude journal, I'll just tease out, I don't have it pinned down perfectly, but I've modified mine over the years. And it's a little leather bound notebook that you can get off of Amazon. I like the leather ones because it feels cool.
Yep.
But I thought of the phrase counting my blessings. And so what I do is I just write down, I number them 5 blessings for the day. And I set it next to my toothbrush because I found that's the easiest place for me to do it. I used to do it in bed, like I'd set it next to my bed and then I'd get distracted, right?
Yep.
But, I haven't been doing that long, and I've got like 1,500, I'm on like 1,500 or something like that. And every now and again, I just go back and look at that, and so do my kids, and it puts a smile on my face. It's a really, really special thing. So it may turn out to be kind of one of those legacy things for me where I'm able to give them to my kids and grandkids, but that I'm enjoying it now, the exercise and then the reflection.
I think that's a really wonderful way for your children to get to know you as a person and not as dad.
Yeah.
And I bet for your grandchildren, I know it's a little early for grandchildren, but I would imagine for your grandchildren, because they'll have a completely different experience with you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, and are you a James Clear fan?
Yeah, Atomic Habits. Yeah. I am. I'm just not as good as some of these guys. They're just so good. I've got a couple of friends they're amazing. They're disciplined. My God gave me a certain capacity of willpower. And I stretch that all the time. There's actually an author that came before James Clear, and it's going to bug me that I don't know her name off the top of my head, but The Discipline is the name of the book. Maybe I can get you the name after this so you can put it in the show notes. But I actually was a fan of hers before James Clear because she it wasn't as overwhelming to me. She helped me understand it. And Atomic Habits is great. All these habits books and resources that are out now are wonderful. And of course, as we know, your habits dictate your behavior, and behavior ultimately your character, and character reputation. So it all does come down to the habits.
Yes. And I think people so often think it comes down to willpower, but you have a finite amount of willpower. If you can create your day so that it just becomes a habit, you don't really have to think about it. And I don't even know that it's discipline, it's habit. So I think it really can. I have a couple of habits every day, and I know my husband does also, and they just are what we do. There's no thinking about it.
Yeah. That's wonderful when a habit becomes just a part of regular routine, where I can't flip the switch to where some of these high capacity individuals, they get up at 4:30, they eat 5 raw eggs, they take a 10-minute cold shower, they run 3 miles, and they journal and they read the Bible. It's like, dude, I can do a little bit, but I can't do all that stuff. So I know who I am, and I try to just create some habits to make modifications and slight improvements from where I was yesterday.
I do the same. I have a friend that gets up at 4:30 every morning and has exercised more in the next hour than I have all week. And I'm not a slouch in that department. And I'm just like, God bless, go forth. I'm sleeping until 5:30.
And you know what? I'm going to have ice cream this afternoon too.
Yes.
And maybe 3 cups of coffee. Yeah. I mean, there's certainly boundaries and stuff, but I just want to be the last thing I want to do is start comparing myself to other people, because I feel like that'll just rob my joy. I just try to be better than I was yesterday. And that's a lot that often that reflection is done in my annual planning, which I pretty disciplined with and say, was I happy with the thing, the person I am last year? And if not, what modifications do I need to do? And then that dictates the kind of the strategy for the next year. And I've probably been doing that for 15 years.
Yeah, I've been doing the same. And I'm not so good at the monthly, but I'm pretty good at the weekly reflection as well. What went well? What didn't go well?
Yeah.
How do I manage that into next week? And I think reflecting on your really good days is important also, so that you remember, because I think you don't remember. If you don't write it down, you don't remember even in a month.
Yeah, exactly. Again, I hate those people who do remember. So I have to write stuff down, journal, and reflect. and one of the tools that maybe your audience might enjoy is one called Tiny Pulse. And we use this as a tool to take inventory of conversations, to thank people, to thank employees, to reflect. It's not an expensive tool, but if you're, I know you got a lot of business owners, we find that to be a useful tool for some of these ideas.
Okay, I will put that in the show notes also. Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about your book, because I thought that was quite interesting also.
Yeah, so I have 3 books, and the latest one's called, I'll kind of go backwards. The latest one's called 1880, Everything You Need to Be Doing with Your Money from age 18 to age 80. Okay. And yeah, you can just open the book and say, okay, I'm 50, and what should I be doing now? And I've had thousands of conversations kneecap to kneecap with people about money. So I feel good about being in the ballpark of people's ages, what they need to be doing. Then I spent a lot of time in that book talking about pivoting, and that's important. We use that word a lot. The book before that was, my publisher wanted to have something in Borders and Barnes and Nobles. That obviously didn't materialize because of what's happened, but it's The Grand Money Chasm. That's designed to teach grandparents how to teach their grandkids about money without upsetting the kids. And
I know a few people to give that to.
Yeah, and it's a real short mini book, but obviously I'm not a grandparent, but I just talked to a bunch of grandparents and they gave me that information and I just compiled it in a short little read. So that one's fun. And then the first one was called Small Business, Big Pressure.
Yep.
Dave Ramsey did a great endorsement on that book.
I saw.
And that's just kind of what, how we built PAX, which PAX became an Inc. 5,000, one of the fastest growing companies in the country, 4 years in a row. And people were wanting to know some of the things that we were doing. And so I compiled that book to express that. And I express it in a faith-based approach because faith is an integral part of my life and my business.
And I saw that you are a Forbes Council member also. How has that experience been for you?
It's been good. Yeah. So I write for several publications, and Forbes being one of them. And I've enjoyed that. I've always enjoyed writing and expressing my thoughts, and it's a peculiar thing. I don't play golf. I don't have a lot of good like hobbies. I mean, I've done stuff, but it's kind of strange. I used to do a lot of martial arts. And I was really into that. But right now, I just enjoy writing. It's good. So Forbes is a platform that I can express my writing, and they can clean up all the misspells words. Which is, I didn't say.
Isn't it lovely to have an editor?
Yeah, they have their own editor. So I enjoy doing that. And so you could Google. There's probably 5 or 6 articles there. I've got one coming out soon that's hopefully produced that talks about the difference between retiring in Texas versus Florida.
There is a big difference. I lived in Florida for a long time. My father still lives in Florida. There is a big difference retiring in Texas and Florida.
Yeah, so make sure you read that article and then comment on it, because I'm sure there'll be a lot of comments about it.
I'm sure all the Floridians are going to be a little disturbed, I'm sure.
I'm sure I thought I was fair in the assessment, but I was hoping to create stir a little bit of conversation.
All right. We will link to that one in the show notes too, because we've got a little bit of time before this episode comes. Any parting words for people who are pivoting out of their businesses?
Absolutely. Gosh, there's so much to talk about. I think that it takes a 5-year pivot. So if somebody says, I want to retire at 65, the planning has to be done at 60.
Okay.
There's just a lot of work to be done there, including making sure that you don't frustrate your spouse when you transition out. And then some of the legal stuff but it takes 5 years to make that transition. And then the second thing I'd mention is it's very important is that for those individuals that are pivoting, to think long-term and to keep that in your mind, because there's 20 or 30 years of life left, and that's a lot of life. And so I would love for those transitioning to think long-term. And if you think long-term, you'd be surprised at what you can accomplish.
Well, thank you very much for spending a little bit of time with us today. We are going to link to your new article in Forbes, and we're going to link to the books and the podcast. So people can find those resources as well as a couple of other things that we talked about. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a review and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, we're everywhere. Have a great day. Thanks so much.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Raising the Bar is powered by Altiqe Consulting, the country's leading independent expert in healthcare cost containment. Astute employers know there's a better way to offer health insurance, and we help them achieve it.